fans. It's your boy, Knew Better, Do Better, back with another episode of Voices of Arda. This is episode 16. I am here with my wonderful, fabulous co-host, KaliCosplay. Kali, introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. KaliCosplay here again for another wonderful episode of Voices of Arda. And
yes.
May I introduce the guest, KnewBettaDoBetta? I'm so excited.
May you enter. You are literally the boss. You tell me what to do. Go ahead and do what you do.
All right. And joining us for this episode, we have Mary Clay Watt, who is the phenomenal one-woman show of That's What I'm Tolkien About podcast. Mary MC, hello.
Hi.
Who is also my arch nemesis when it comes to the Silmarillion. So,
possibly. I think you've created this nemesis-ness in your head, because I'm just like, hey, I'm here to have a good time, and you're like, no, you will love the Silmarillion.
I feel like it's at my expense. Yeah. What's up? The wonderful podcast you have. I want to just let everybody know, if you're not following the podcast, make sure you follow. That's what I'm talking about. And you listen. Hilarious. Very informative, but the way you do it, I find it like really engaging, because you keep it funky. Like you don't slight your feelings for like like people's reactions. Like you don't cater to anyone. What you feel is what you feel, and that is really special. And this is why we're nemesis. You're like, I don't like this certain part of this, and I'm like, what the hell? You're like, I don't like it. Knew better. That's it. And I really commend you for standing your ground. Now I'm going to have to, I'm going to have to bully you a little bit, but we'll get into that. So tell us where we can find your podcast. Tell us all about yourself. Let us know.
Wow, those are such wonderful words. Thank you both. It's really funny being on the other side of like being introduced into a podcast, because usually I'm doing that. So that's really weird to be sitting here like, I'm just here to entertain, rather than leading it. Yeah, you can listen to my podcast. That's What I'm Tolkien About. There are new episodes every Tuesday. You can get it wherever you get podcasts. If you listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all that jazz. You can follow the podcast on social media at Tolkien About Pod. In particular, on Instagram, I have some very funny, sometimes controversial memes that I make. They're all, I say that my memes are homegrown. I make them all every week, and some of them are terrible and don't make sense, and some of them are just like, why would you make that? That's so stupid. So
the one this week, I was like, why'd you tag me in this?
I was like, is this too chaotic? For those who maybe haven't seen it, I used Gimli's infamous line for, not Gimli, Freudian slip there. What's his name? Durin.
We all have Gimli on the mind.
Durin's. I used Durin's infamous line from the previous episode, "Give me the meat," and turned that into a meme about Halbrand. You can do the math.
I'd rather not. I'm not good at math, so.
I was like, it's just, this line is begging to be turned into a meme.
No,
are you kidding me? I'm like, this is, and I did message my whole friend group, and I was like, is this too chaotic? And they were all like, post it. So
love it. Love the chaos.
So I went for it. Yeah. And Kali was on this previous week to talk about Rings of Power episode 5. So if you want to check her out, then go to that episode. But yeah, I've been documenting my journey through the works of Tolkien for the first time. I don't know why, but for some reason growing up, the movies just never came to me. I think they were like on in the background sometimes at like friends' houses, or like my older brother was watching it, but just never really showed any interest in watching them. And then one time in college, I had to watch Fellowship of the Ring for a film class. And I hated it. I was like, this is such a slow movie. I didn't understand what I was getting into. In my mind, like years later, when I was reading Fellowship, Boromir and Aragorn were the same person.
Oh my goodness.
Because of like what I remembered from the movie. I was like, who are all these tiny men? like, why are some of them funny and like what's going on? And then I was so confused that I was like, what do you mean they didn't destroy the ring in this movie? Like, I thought that was the whole point. I'm like, this is a really slow plot if it's going to take you 3 movies to throw a ring in a fire. Jeez.
You see why she's my nemesis?
And then years later, I came up with this idea for a podcast name called That's What I'm Tolkien About. And I said, boy, that would be a great name for a Lord of the Rings podcast, but I can't host it because I know nothing about Lord of the Rings, but someone else out there should host it. And then I was like, well, wait a minute. There are other podcasts that show someone experiencing that world for the first time. And so I tweeted about it, and some friends from college who also had a podcast, Ethan Edgehill and Tyler Carlin of Bacon and Eggs. They helped me get it off the ground. And then here I am 3 years later. I read and watched all of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit, and a couple extra random things that were really fun, like the animated films from the 70s and the Soviet Union era TV adaptations of Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Those were wild. I've read a couple of the famous, there's just one piece of infamous fan fiction written by, I don't remember. Oh, that's it. It was written by Cassandra Clare, who's now a like published author. But she wrote these series of fan fictions called The Very Secret Diaries. And it was these just like really hilarious diary entries of the Fellowship written on like LiveJournal in 2002. So just like,
oh my gosh,
such a time capsule of the era. So just like some really fun stuff. And then, yeah, the Silmarillion. I haven't officially finished it because I do still have the remaining 2 sections after you end the chapters. So I finished the chapters just in time for Rings of Power to start. And then after Rings of Power, I'll go back and finish. I forget what the names of the last 2 sections are. You guys both know the names of them.
The Calibeth?
Yeah, that.
Of the Rings of Power.
And then the super relevant section.
Which you should have read before you watched Rings of Power.
I know, but I ran out of time. My scheduling just didn't,
You can finish those chapters in a couple hours.
Yeah, but I didn't want to rush through anything. I wanted to give it the time that and attention that I was giving to the rest of the chapters and stuff. And of course, like looking back on things in hindsight, I'm like, oh, I could have combined these chapters, or oh, this chapter that I made a 2-parter, I should have just edited things down to 1 episode. Because sometimes when I have a really great recording, I'm like, I don't want to cut out all of this. And so I just make it a 2-part episode, even if the chapter itself doesn't necessarily have to be a 2-parter. But sometimes you just have really great conversations. And I'm like, I don't want to get rid of any of this. I want everyone to hear it. So yeah, maybe if my planning had been a little bit better, I could have finished those last 2 sections before Rings of Power, but I don't know. I kind of like watching the show and not knowing the full context of what's about. Like, I know a little of the context and background of some of these characters and the world, and like how we came to be where we are in Middle Earth right now. But I also like not knowing what's going to come. So it's a little bit of both,
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's primarily what we'll be talking about in today's episode of Voices of Arda. We're going to get into the Silmarillion, her experience in reading it for the first time, her likes, her dislikes, which there are going to be a lot of dislikes apparently. Whatever, it's fine. I know that I'm foreboding a moment in the podcast, so I'm going to just rush it along. Callie, tell your dumb joke. Tell your dumb joke. Let's just get it out of here. Let's just so we can get things moving along.
All right. So before we introduce like this sort of second theme of this episode, I got a question for y'all. Why do Instagram influencers enjoy shopping at Walmart so much? Because they can't get enough of the self-checkout.
Oh, okay. I was trying to think of something about like price tags and hashtags, you know?
Yeah. You gotta check yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Shortening my lifespan with your bad jokes. I just want you to
I know.
that.
Giving you, I know. Every new gray hair is because of me. I know.
Yeah, I already have enough.
Know.
Like,
all right. So, MC, is that what you would like to go by, or
Sure, yeah.
Miss Watt, Miss Mary Clay? We can call you anything you want.
Yeah, MC is good. Yeah.
MC. So MC just went through the Silmarillion for the first time. KnewBettaDoBetta, not your first time with the Silmarillion. Nuh-uh. No.
Not at all.
And so, being someone who is extremely familiar with the Silmarillion, you are about to take on a very fun project coming up. Do you want to talk about it?
Sure. So I will be teaching classes on the Silmarillion in the month of November at Signum University. That is the university that the Tolkien professor teaches his classes. So I'll be doing that. KnewBettaDoBetta's Guide to the Silmarillion. So if you guys want to sign up for those classes, you go to signumuniversity.com. I'm not sure if they're up yet, but they will be up very soon. We'll get that information out to you as soon as everything's available, but just keep a lookout for KnewBettaDoBetta's Guide to the Silmarillion, the classes. I'll be doing 2 classes per week for 4 weeks. So it'll be 8 classes in total, and it will be quite the experience. So you'll get it in my native dialect, you know what I'm saying, and my regular, vernacular. So it won't be, so nerdy and stuffed shirt, you know what I'm saying? I'll be just talking that talk and explaining it and breaking things down into layman's terms and to understandable terms for everyone, because it can be very dense. It can be very, how do you say this? Biblical. It's like the Bible for Lord of the Rings. So yeah, we're gonna get into it. It is amazing. I think it is one of the greatest pieces of fiction ever written. And I'm about to put MC through the ringer right now. So let's get back into it.
I saw that look that she gave you when you said it, one of the best pieces. She was like, ah. But let's start with something positive. You must have had a favorite part of the Silmarillion as you went through it, MC. Was there anything that you really liked?
Yeah, I loved all of the stuff with Feanor because I loved the drama. It was outstanding.
Like
and
Feanor.
Huh?
The guy everybody hates, you like him.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, like, I wouldn't be like, oh yeah, he's the best, and he is, he was just really interesting to read about. And
he's complex.
Yes, yeah, complex.
He's very complex.
And you know what? Sometimes the people who just, I mean, it's like however, everyone loved the Heath Ledger's Joker. Flip that around. Heath Ledger's the Joker, whatever. Anyway, and it's because like he causes chaos, and sometimes you just want to watch the world burn, and so it's just really interesting to read those characters and see where they begin and see where they go and the consequences that people have to deal with. When I was reading Lord of the Rings, I loved the chapter with Shelob, so I loved reading about Ungoliant and her origins, and everything was really cool and interesting. Melian was really cool to read, and every now and then, like there would be little bits of like you could just tell she was like in the background doing an eye roll in a scene or something when something else is going on, and then it says Melian said nothing. And so there were definitely a lot of enjoyable parts. Yeah.
All right, that's awesome. Well, I guess we can agree there. No, but
it's not exactly all insane stuff, a lot of it is great. And so it is, I think a lot of people described it as, it's just these stories to read about rather than sometimes thinking of it as one cohesive book is harder. And so when a lot of people described it as like, oh yeah, these are just bits and, stories that are being told within, the history of Middle Earth and Arda, that's also like, I think a helpful way to frame it.
Okay.
Nice, nice.
I look at it like as like a history,
Mm.
and because it just goes canonically through the timeline, and then it focuses on certain important history of certain events, and then what I'm saying, those things lead up to what we know in the Lord of the Rings, and then it makes things clearer. It gives you a vast understanding of the peoples that we know from the Third Age that we're so invested in, because we're dealing in the Third Age, which with a much more condensed story, that we're like dealing with people, and we're like going throughout their entire life of we're following Aragorn, and we know, hey, these are the stakes for him, but we're literally going through the entire book with him, Frodo, Gandalf. It's not touching upon them. That we're really following him around for months, and basically like a whole year, and the world is at stake. Whereas in the Silmarillion, it's little shorter stories, but that touch on plot points, but the time jumps a little bit here and there, and so seeing it the beginnings of where you get to is awesome. And I really like the background history and the lore. It's just something that I enjoy. So I'm always interested to see how other people interpret it and enjoy it, or what they think of it. And if they can match it up to the Lord of the Rings. I always say, if you read the Silmarillion, then go back and read the Lord of the Rings, it'll enhance the Lord of the Rings for you, and you'll pick up on things that you missed out, and then it'll make it that much greater. Even The Hobbit, and then when you're reading The Hobbit, and you see things like you see Elrond, and he holds up the sword. He says, "This is Glamdring the Foehammer that was once wielded by the King of Gondolin." When you're reading The Hobbit, you're like, I don't know what a gondolin is, but that sounds cool. And you go about your business, and it doesn't really mean too many things to you. Then when you come to find out how epic and important Gondolin is, and who the king of Gondolin is, and that Elrond is directly descended from him, it's like, what? And then you're walking around like Gandalf is walking around with this sword. That's why it's so, like, it's amazing. You know what I'm saying? And to one of the things you said, I love Shelob in the Lord of the Rings. So that really was cool to hear about Ungoliant. And then when you see Ungoliant, literally one of her last children is Shelob. Her last child is Shelob. And to read about, Shelob is in Nandungortheb at some point. You know this because that's where Ungoliant had her children. So it's just like, wow, the history is just so rich. And it's a ton of that, like tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of that. You could just keep going back and forth. Consequences, literally the consequences of everything that happens in the first age and before end up in the Lord of the Rings. All the way down to Feanor, you can see the Palantir, which he created. So you see the 7 seeing stones he's using, he created those. So then it's like, wow, it's a flyby in the Lord of the Rings. You don't even think about it. Gandalf says, I think they were created by Feanor, but I don't know, whatever. And you go about it, and you're not thinking about it. You don't know who Feanor is, but then to get that called back all the way to the Silmarillion, then you're really getting into it, and how complex and immense the stakes are and the story is. It's just like mind blowing to me. So that's why I'm so adamant about people understanding it, like trying to like it, trying to give it a chance. But it can be a very arduous task, very draining. It's difficult. It's not an easy read. So I understand it. I didn't get it my first time. It took me a few times to get through it for me to actually feel like I was confident in fully knowing everything that's going on. So I commend you.
I'm still going through it and trying to find that confidence. maybe if I get to the 50th read, I'll get there.
Oh my gosh. I can't comprehend that.
It's just, yeah, I don't know how to explain that either. It's either glutton for punishment, or I think it's just that I love the world, so like this world so much, and I really want to understand it and be able to engage in conversations about it confidently the way KnewBettaDoBetta does.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so much to know. KnewBetta, how do you imagine yourself talking about Feanor in the course that you're doing coming up? Like, seeing as that is, yeah, MC's favorite.
Sometimes the trouble with genius is, you can be so good at something that you get enamored with yourself, and you kind of you and what you've created become the focal point of the world when family and the rest of the world get thrown to the back burner. Now, not in the case with him, where necessarily his family is. He loved his sons and he loved his father, but then his brothers he didn't care for. Then he didn't even care about saving the world. He could have broken his jewels open and rekindled the two trees, but he chose not to do that because he was like, I'll never be able to create these again. And so he wasn't very self-sacrificing in that sense. He was all about self-sacrifice when it came to, getting Morgoth back for what he did to him. So he was very self-interested. He was very narcissistic. You know what I'm saying? And that leads to so many problems with his sons. He made them take a terrible oath, and he made them hold to it. And then the consequences of what happened because of this oath echoed throughout eternity. You can see that all the way up to Elrond is dealing with that, even in the Third Age. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy to think how just a quick decision that he made in anger can just have a lasting impression, and it comes from selfishness and just narcissism, and it's so crazy because he is said to be the greatest elf in all parts, right? And the problem is I think he knew that, and then he actually is very similar to Melkor. He in a certain way, he hates Melkor, but he's very similar. He acts very similar to him. Melkor is the greatest of the Valar, and he knows it, and he thinks he's entitled to everything and wants everything to go his way. And it's Feanor is very interesting in that scenario. Like he wants to chase Melkor, so he's like, "Hey, give me the ships." You know what I'm saying? Like, help us. And when the Teleri are like, "Hey, I think you should just chill out and not go about it this way," you know what I'm saying? I can't give you the ships. You my peoples. But sometimes the best way is to go about it is to give you solid advice. And you know what I'm saying? He's just like, "What?" And he just mocks them, and then he tries to take the ship, and he ends up killing them. And then he leaves his brother and his peoples, and you see the rash onslaught. Even when he dies, he goes out into the forefront of the battle and doesn't wait for anybody, doesn't wait for any backup, and he's fighting the Balrogs. He's undaunted. He doesn't care, and he's just like all about self, and he thinks he's God's gift, and it ends up to his downfall. And even in his downfall, he still doesn't care. He's like willing to put that on his sons. He's still like, whatever, now it's on y'all to do this. And it's just like, oh my goodness. He's such an interesting character because if you look at him, he's so skilled and so fiery. Like his passion is, you want that type of passion. You're like, wow, I admire that. Like his skill is, even the gods admire his skill at crafting. And he created such good things: the Silmarils, the Feanorian lamps, the Feanorian runes, the Palantir, like so many good things, so many gems and beautiful works. And you admire that. And you're like, wow, this is amazing. But look at it, look at the price. It's just he's really tragic, and it's really tragic, and he's not a good guy. You know what I'm saying? So and it shows elves in a very different light for the first time. You think of elves as all being, omnipotent and graceful and nice, but then you see they're not all like that. So that's my thoughts on Feanor.
Yeah, Feanor is just he's a great example of hubris. He's, a great example of, the downfalls of pride. There's just so much to talk about when it comes to him and what he left behind.
Yeah, absolutely. 100% agree. So
dang, that was a good choice. That was a good conversation starter right there. Did you have, MC, a least favorite part or character?
Let me get out my list.
Oh
no,
boy.
I thought KnewBetta was just walking away.
He was just leaving. He's like, I don't want to hear this
part. So definitely I went in trying to have as open a mind as possible, being like, this is gonna be hard. I know what I'm getting into. I mean, that being said, I feel like I still didn't fully know what I was getting into. But I really tried to have an open mind, and I'm like, I'm not going to go into this, expecting to hate everything. And even at the end of the day, I wouldn't say I hate the Silmarillion. However, my breaking point came when I reached the chapter, the realms of Beleriand and its realms, whatever it's called.
I figured that would be
so good. Such a good chapter.
I had been warned about it by multiple guests who had been on leading up to that point, and they were saying, oh, you had like there's this one chapter where it's just all about a map. And I was like, okay, yeah, whatever. And literally I was reading like the first 4 sentences over and over and over, just like, I don't know what's happening. I don't know. Like, and I was flipping back and forth between maps at the back of my book, and there was a map insert into that chapter. And so I'm looking at that one and I'm like, I don't know what's happening at all anymore. And I was looking up guides and it just wasn't clicking for me. And in all honesty, anytime I was reading Lord of the Rings and he would mention directions or geographical locations, like my eyes just glossed over, and I was like, I'm just not going to pay attention to that, because like all I need to know about is, okay, where are our characters now? Oh, they're in Minas Tirith. Great. That's all I need to know. I don't know where Minas Tirith is, in geographical location to the mountain that's north of the river, that's west of the grove, that's southwest and southeast of the road. And, you turn at this rock and 4 degrees to the south. Like, I don't need to know any of that, Tolkien. Just tell me where we are. We're in Minas Tirith. Great. Leave it there. So the fact that has been one of my weak points reading Tolkien since the beginning, and then there came this entire chapter about a map, and I really lost it when I kept I was looking at the map and I'm like, so where exactly is Angband? And I just kept I'm like, I know it's in the north, but like, where is it? And I was looking and looking, and I'm looking at things up online. And then finally, I found something that let me know that Angband is not on the map of Beleriand that is provided in the book copy. And I was like, I just spent the past 15 minutes trying to find something on a map that is not
isn't there
here. I just fully was like, I honestly don't know how I finished that chapter, I'll be honest, but I finished it. And yeah, that was when I was like, you know what? Maybe it's okay for me to not like the Silmarillion, because at that point, I was
such an early chapter.
I was trying to keep such an open mind, and everyone was like, oh, well, it gets better. It gets better. And I'm like, I'm on chapter 14. It says that there's 28 chapters. At this point, I'm more than halfway through, and it has not gotten better. What are you guys talking about? It has not, quote unquote, got like, oh, it gets really juicy and interesting. But it never got to that point to me where I was like, oh, I need to turn the page and find out what's going to happen next. So I was like, it was at that point that I was like, you know what? Maybe it's time to let go of this idea that the Silmarillion is going to come into my heart like it has for so many people, and just accept that, you know what? Maybe it's okay to just read it and talk about it with people and move on with my life.
You know what? It's your first read. So you might not give it any more reads, but it's your first read. So you're not going to feel like that on your first read. And I wholeheartedly agree with that. I didn't feel like that either. I gave up several times. I was like, I can't even get past this point. This is ridiculous. But then once I had to fully get it. Once I fully got everything, I was like, oh, this is amazing. And especially when it comes to the map. Like, I know you're not appreciative of it because it's a lot to take in. It's like just descriptions. But once, like, you got to remember, there are immense travels taking place and immense warfare strategies being implemented. So when you look at it in that mind of realms and warfare tactics, and then you're reading and you're reading what's going on, as far as somewhere people, you can't just go this way and you can't go that way. Doriath is surrounded by an invisible force field type situation going on there. There's a pass into Beleriand on the west. There's a pass into Beleriand on the east. There's a plain in the middle known as Angfalglyph. It used to be called Ardgalan. You know what I'm saying? Like, you see that Hithlum is surrounded by the shadowy mountains there. Like, you're like, okay, so this place is fortified. This place is where Gondolin is completely fortified and hidden. And okay, Nargothrond is behind this river, and it's hidden in a gorge. I understand that. You know what I'm saying? Like, you see, oh, there's 7 rivers here, and in the midst of that is Assyrian. Okay, I understand that. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, so when Morgoth is coming down, and he talk about the Western Pass. There's an island there that guards that pass, and there's a tower there that was built. I mean, it's Tirith, and it's Tol Syrian is the island. So the River Syrian runs up that way, and they always talk about Syrian. Syrian is in the west, Gelion is in the east, and those are the two major rivers. But Syrian is the most important one because the Western Pass is where, you know what I'm saying, the Noldor live, the main Noldor live, and most actions happen there. So you can concentrate yourself on mostly things like that. And then you notice that, in Dorthonion, it talks about how it's rocky and it has like pitfalls, and the trees are bare and this, that, and the third. And it's like not good terrain. So Morgoth does not try to keep attacking there because it doesn't make sense to really, he takes it over eventually, but it doesn't make sense to go that way. So now you're in your head, you're like, okay, I see why he doesn't just go straight down. He has to go through the passes instead. So it makes a bunch of sense when you really like put it together, but it's going to take a while for you to get that and understand it. You know what I'm saying? So he's not describing these things for no reason. Because then if you didn't describe it that way, you could look at the map and be like, well, why the hell didn't he just go straight down and go to Doriath that way? Why wouldn't he just go straight? Why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? Why can't this person go that way? You can't just do anything. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's a testament to, him being in World War One, and you can't just do anything. You couldn't just walk around just because you could take this path. Doesn't mean you could take that path. You have to strategically do things. There's physical obstacles. There's military obstacles. You know what I'm saying? There's changes in things. Beleriand gets changed, and the world, Arda gets changed many times throughout the entire Silmarillion. So things like that happen. You know what I'm saying? So when you get it down, you appreciate it. I promise you. I promise you. And you'll really, really understand. You know what I'm saying? Like why it's so great. You know what I'm saying? And that's why I appreciate that chapter all the more, because it's really dope that he sets these things up, and to have the wherewithal to be like, well, they can't just do this. They can't just go this way. Look, this is why they can't go this way. Oh, the dwarves want to come from the mountains and they have to pass through this guy's land. So this guy is going to become immensely rich because the dwarf road travels directly through there. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's a bunch of stuff like that. Even with Círdan, living on the coast, he was safe from most of the attacks of Morgoth until finally the rest of the passes got destroyed, and then he could come down in great strength. And finally, Círdan was one of the last to actually get his stuff taken over because Morgoth doesn't send troops by water. So it took for him to be able to get through the rest of the terrain and the places and passes to attack Círdan. And Círdan was one of the last people to fall, and it's very important. So even Círdan helping out, he could just sail up because he was a shipbuilder, and those elves lived by the sea. So he would travel up north and go by the Firth of Drangis and be able to help Hithlum, which did happen a couple of times. So you can see that it's just you'll get it when you get it. But like I can see your first read through, you're gonna be like, what is this? It's too much, it's overload. But just understand there's more at stake than just looking at it. It's more at stake than just the names. Like they're meaningful. Everything has a meaning. Every single hill, bump, river. Certain rivers are blessed. So when they talk about the Evren, the lake of Evren, like it's blessed, it's hallowed. So when Turin drinks from it, he comes out of his stupor because it's hallowed by Ulmo and Melian. You know what I'm saying? And as Galduin is a blessed, little river. So things that, it's enchanted kind of. So things that go through there, like you'll see, even Karkaroth, when he had swallowed the Silmaril, he drank out of Esgaluin and it cooled. It made him feel better. You know what I'm saying? And it even says that when he was fighting Huan, that he was able to think more because it was cool by the waters from the pain. So he actually, the cunning came back into his mind, and then he snuck around as opposed to just he was on a rampage before. So every little thing that Tolkien puts in there is purposeful. And once you understand that, you'll appreciate it all the more. Maybe not you, because you're very cynical and sarcastic, but
I know that I gained an immense appreciation for the map since meeting KnewBetta. Like, one of the first things he ever told me, I forget what question was but he always says, "You always start with the map, Kali. You always start with the map," and that has stuck with me to the point where I now have several of them hanging around my walls, and I stare at them all the time, and I'm internalizing them now. But how do you feel? How do you feel about the maps after hearing that little spiel, MC?
I First of all, I've never heard someone speak with so much passion about geographical terrain, aside from Tolkien himself, probably. So bravo.
Yes.
Thank you.
Secondly, you say all of that, like that map, like reading that map chapter, like I remembered anything of what I read and that it influenced my reading thereafter. That reading the map chapter helped me understand the complexities of the land.
I didn't think that it did, because I didn't. It wasn't like I got it like, oh, I read this one time and it was that's not at all. I don't even think Tolkien probably thinks that you're going to get it that at the first time. But when you go back and you read it and get an understanding, if you're willing to subject yourself to that, then you will. I promise you, you will be like, oh shit, this is super important. Like everything matters. Like everything matters. Like
I think therein lies the rub with the Silmarillion and me, is that not everything has to matter. Sometimes I want to speak to Tolkien and say, hey, not everything has to have a deep meaning. Not every blade of grass has to have a history. It's okay to just let people use their imaginations and imagine how that blade of grass came to grow in that field. Sometimes not everything needs to have a deep meaning behind it. And I think that's just my issue with like the Silmarillion, is the entire time I'm just like, this is like at the time that he was doing this, I'm like, I don't think anyone was asking for this much detail from, like, maybe some I just imagine, I don't know, some fans writing in and being like, how did Middle Earth come to be formed? And he's like, oh my God, I'm so glad you asked. And then just word vomits all of this. Whereas you can also just be like, oh, well, in Middle Earth, there's a god named Eru Iluvatar, and he created the earth. And sure, in what came out to be was a lot more complex than that, but like, it didn't need to be complex. It didn't need to be what it came to be. And that's just my thing, is I'm like, we didn't need this. We really didn't need this. I think we all enjoyed Lord of the Rings just as much without knowing any of this extra stuff.
I feel quite the contrary. I feel absolutely.
And I knew you would. I knew you would.
I feel like it's super, super important. I feel like because of the Lord of the Rings, it's important, because he's literally dropping breadcrumbs in the Lord of the Rings the entire time. And just to get your mouth salivating for information on what is this, what is that, what is this, what is that. It's cool to read it if you just want to read it and whatever. But if you care about the story and you're like, well, I want to know what that was, and why is Gimli sad when he mentions these places, and why does he bow his head in front of, like, what is going on? Why does only Gandalf know this language? Why only Gandalf? I understand he's a wizard, but only him and Elrond, and like, what does that even mean? What do you mean the high elves of the West? What does that mean? What are you talking about? Where is Gondolin? And why does it seem so important when you say, you know, that's where your father, who apparently he saved the entire world, he in Gondolin before his fall. Where's Gondolin at? You know what I'm saying? Like, well, what was going on with Gilgalad? Like, he seems to be very revered, and they sing of him in such reverence. And well, where is he from? Why is Galadriel glowing and the rest of everybody else not glowing? Why is she so freaking powerful? Why?
See,
Just because? Just because isn't good enough sometimes.
I understand that. And also, with what I'm about to say, I also understand that this is not what you are saying or implying at all. But when I hear, oh, if you really love Lord of the Rings, then you would read the Silmarillion.
No, I'm not implying anything.
I know. But because the Silmarillion, I think, is such an inaccessible thing to read. It's really difficult. And I say this as someone who I took AP English all throughout high school. I have a degree in communication studies. I read a lot of like complex theory in college. So I have a fairly, high literacy, understanding. And this was really hard to read. So, and that's kind of what the point of my podcast is too, is that it's a very low entry point into Tolkien, because it is reading Tolkien is such an intimidating thing. And so the Silmarillion to me is a very inaccessible piece of literature, because it's hard to read, it's hard to understand, it's hard to keep all the characters straight. And so hearing things like, oh, well, in order to fully appreciate Lord of the Rings, you really need to read the Silmarillion, to me makes it seem like people who don't read the Silmarillion or haven't read the Silmarillion, that their love and appreciation for Lord of the Rings isn't real until they've read the Silmarillion, which, again, I know that's not at all what you're saying or in the camp of, but I think there is some underlying implications of that in the fandom. And so that's why I'm such a non-advocate, honestly, for the Silmarillion of, so people like you who do want to know those details, that's awesome that the Silmarillion exists for you to go and read that. But it is, to me, just such an unnecessary piece of literature. And I know that pains you to hear.
Hey, fair enough.
No, that is very fair. Those are very fair points.
Fair. Yeah, everything isn't for everybody. So my apologies if I came across that way.
No, absolutely not. I want to be clear that you are not coming across that way at all.
Yeah,
but I think that's part of why
you're 100% right. So my love sometimes can blind me like Feanor's love blinded him. So my love and appreciation for the Silmarillion can do that. So like I said, my apologies. And even though I didn't mean it in that way, I don't want to come across that way. It's for, what you like is what you like, what you can interpret, and what you choose to digest, and what you choose to care about or not care about is completely up to the person. You know what I'm saying? So I completely understand that. You know what I'm saying? If you just love The Hobbit for what it is and you don't want to read Lord of the Rings, that's your prerogative, and I completely get that. And they're different stories in varying ways, and there's. So you do what makes you happy and what you're comfortable with. And like I said, you don't need that story. You don't need it, because you have what you need. You got what you needed out of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit. You know what I'm saying? So if you want to go that extra mile and read the Silmarillion, then go ahead and do so. I applaud you for doing so, because it is an undertaking, and anybody will tell you it is probably like one of the hardest books on earth to read. That's 100% fact. That is like a known thing. So I applaud you for even doing it and having a podcast about it. Your experience doing it is really dope. So I know we go back and forth and joke around, but I think it was amazing and stuff like that. I always want somebody to experience the love that I have, so I get like that. So
yeah,
I want you to feel what I feel and understand what I understand, and connect what I connect, and for it to make you so happy. You know what I'm saying? So I'm always looking for that, and at times I can steer you in the wrong path, because everything isn't for everybody, like I said. So
Yeah. And ultimately that's why we're all so defensive of, I mean, and I'm not saying like we, but like collectively people, we are so defensive over the shows and books and movies that we like is because of what you said, which is like, I just want you to feel what I feel about this thing. And so when someone doesn't feel that same way, then we see some of the things that have happened because of rings of power, and things get ugly, unfortunately. And it all stems from people just want you to connect with something the way that they connect with it. And those are totally different meanings for everyone else, and those differ entirely. And that's why my like ultimate, I don't know, message at the end of the day is always like, everyone just enjoy what you enjoy, and that doesn't take away from other people's enjoyment.
Absolutely.
Which is why so many of these haters are just so ridiculous. It's like, other people enjoying this show that you don't want to watch isn't going to hurt you. You don't have to comment a vomit emoji on every single one of my stupid memes that I post about Rings of Power. I have so many comments that are just vomit emojis. And I'm like, what about me enjoying this thing is actively hurting you? Like,
it's weird. It's weird. That's
man.
like hate culture though. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah.
like 100% what you said is right, but then there's this other ugly part, which is just the culture today, where no matter whether it's Rings of Power, She-Hulk, or Game of Thrones, or whatever the case may have you, anything that they deem is woke, or they want to go railing against because it's not up to their standard or snuff. It's just they have this thing where the internet gives them access to everybody's a critic, and everyone is can say what they want, and they think just because you can, you should, and that unfortunately can lead to some unsightly things and terrible comments, and it's just this. It's a really weird time to be alive, because I'm almost 40, and it was not like this before. You know what I'm saying? It was not like this before. People let you like enjoy what you enjoyed, and there'll be a select few that said something about it, but everybody else kind of like, okay, you enjoy that? All right, I'll go do this thing. It never was this bad and weird where people like are piling on like this. And it's it is what it is. It'll pass. But it's still just shocking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but like what you said about the Silm being somewhat inaccessible. It's inarguably a difficult read, but that's why I think like what you do and what KnewBetta is about to do with this course is so excellent and like really awesome as a way of explaining it in terms that hopefully anybody can understand if they want to.
Yeah. And I mean like the intro of my Silmarillion episodes is where I'm reading the Silmarillion, so you don't have to. And so
that's right. Yeah.
All about and that's why like I've loved so much of I know that statement pains you.
You're killing KnewBetta over here.
I'm trying to meet you halfway, but you keep on.
That's why I love the side of I love all of the Tolkien creators that I've connected with, especially within the past year, because so many people are just about like, I want to share this, that rather than knocking people down because like, oh, you haven't read this or you haven't watched that. Rather than doing that, so many people now have this mindset of like, oh, you don't know this? I can't wait to tell you about it. And so that's why it's so, I think it's just better for I think it's just better for your health to exist with that mindset, of just like, don't be such a negative person and instead share that positivity. And so that's why KnewBetta, that's why I love your videos. You're explaining these stories, but it's like, hey, he's not talking like some British scholar, and he's talking like a normal person. I think I can understand what he's saying. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that is on the flip side of the negativity. the positivity within these communities that have come about is amazing. I grew up very much in a place where we don't read Lord of the Rings, and everybody, is doing a different type of thing. We grew up doing different things, playing basketball and just being on the block and doing this, that, and the third type of stuff. Whereas it wasn't like a bunch of geeks around, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, which is not wrong with being a geek or a nerd or whatever, but wasn't reading Lord of the Rings. So I was the only one into it. So I didn't have an outlet for it ever. I've never had an outlet, like, except for like one family I knew that was really into it, but they were in a different town, and it would be when I got to go there, and it wasn't people that looked like me, but I appreciated them. But as far as anything else, growing up, my friends was, into other things, you know what I'm saying? And it's tough, and then being able to find TikTok and being able to find a whole fandom and groups on Facebook you could just join and share memes and understand the memes, and they understand you and a certain part of you that everybody else doesn't really understand. You know what I'm saying? It was amazing. It's man, it touches my heart, man. It's like finding a family that's you've been long searching for. You know what I'm saying? So and then even in that process, finding a whole nother family, like, okay, I got that, but I'm still me. I still speak to how I speak. I'm still from where I'm from. I still, you know what I mean? I'm still that person. Finding those people are like, yo, that's dope that you out there. I'm out here too. Yo, thank you for doing this, because you talking regular to where I understand what you're saying, and I've been looking for something like that, to where, just like you said, like, I'm speaking regular about to Silmarillion. I'm not talking like scholarship in a sense, even though sometimes I do in many of my videos, but I try to talk regular sometimes, and people are just, receptive to it, which I didn't think was a thing. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm dealing with Tolkien stuff. Got to speak this certain way. I make sure I kind of dumb down my accent or my vernacular to a sense where it's like I'm not speaking too much slang. And then come to find out, like, my highest video is like just speaking regular about it. And it's like they want you to speak a certain way, like just be yourself. And it's not being yourself. I want to be clear about that, because I'm always myself. But at the same time, I just want to make sure everybody is accessible to what I'm talking about. So if I you know what I'm saying, if I what you call it, code switch, it's for everyone to understand, not just my peoples or these peoples or that people. It's for everyone to understand, which I don't have a problem doing. But then it's really cool to see my peoples or peoples that come from my culture, or just in general, like American culture, that just regular, real talk, regular speech. They really appreciate it, and it's very warm and to the heart. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I think that's dope. So I've been getting more into just doing that, and I'm like, okay. I was a little leery about that. People could be judgmental. You know what I'm saying? So especially if you speak slang, or what I'm saying, you come from a region. I come from New York, and we talk very a certain way. And people from down south talk very different. So I'm just thinking about them like, but they might not know what this means, or I don't know. I don't want to, what I mean, sound this way. And then you have the judgmental people where you're like, they don't want that you sound ghetto, or whatever the case, man. There's a bunch of stigmas that, you try to avoid or whatever. You can just say, you know what? How can I make this even kilter for everybody? But everybody's been real receptive, and it's dope. That's the good part of this whole fandom, finding everybody, the camaraderie, finding people like you. Now we message each other back and forth, jokes, and I love that. When I made the map video, you were like, I feel like you're coming for me. You're making the map for me. I was like, yo, that's hilarious, because I actually made the map video because of you, and it wasn't in a bad way. It was like, oh, how can I help?
No,
How
I know,
how can I make this digestible? You know what I'm saying? So thank you for that. So you know what I'm saying? Steel sharpens steel.
and it doesn't escape me how important it is for fans of color to see you as a large creator in this space. That is so important. And just like I've gotten tons of messages from people who say, I started listening to your podcast because I didn't want to listen to a man talk about Tolkien. I listened to your podcast because it's hosted by a woman. And in the same way, I'm sure you have a lot of people who feel comfortable and safe following you and being a part of your community. And I think that's just it's definitely not something to downplayed. Like that's so special and important to have creators who look and think like just as diverse as the fandom is, you know. And unfortunately I can count on, you know, I can count on one hand how many, you know, Tolkien talkers, I kind of hate that word, how many Tolkien talkers of color have quote unquote made it, and count on two hands how many women creators have made quote unquote made it. And so I think it's just so important to take up space. And the fact that you're saying, you know, when you realize that those moments of like I know I've tried to, there have been a few times on the podcast where I'm like, oh, I just sound like a dumb white girl. And I'm like, well, I am a dumb white girl sometimes. So
No.
and sometimes I'm like, man, I'm talking a lot about how hot Halbrand is. That's probably really annoying. And then I'm like, you know what? No, this is who I am. I'm going to talk about this. And
people
so
like that shit, man.
Yeah. And so it's important. It's recognizing that like people are going to connect with you. And it, you know, especially when you are showing those authentic sides of yourself. And that's just so important and powerful in as being fandom creators.
Thank you very much. And I enjoy your videos. Those I get, those just make me laugh. And that's, you know what I mean? So yeah, more of that, please. You know what I'm saying? Like that's what's up.
I'll keep it up as soon as I, you know, hopefully I never stop. Sometimes I'm like, I think one day I'm just gonna like not have any more memes in me. They're just gonna be gone. I'm just not gonna have anything else in my brain left.
So yeah, that's what's up, man.
Yeah, no,
surprisingly good conversation. I didn't expect that from you, MC.
But no, I love your videos too. And as much as you say that, you know, you didn't love your whole experience with the film, or that, you know, you don't feel like because you've only read it once that you don't know as much as other lore masters, but I think that your memes and your videos show that like a real understanding. Like I think you picked up a lot more than you give yourself credit for, because to be able to make humor about something, like you do have to understand it, right? And so you definitely do. Like, don't sell yourself short, girl. Like, you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I say that like that read through of the Silmarillion, I'm like, I got the gist of it. And for me, that's kind of all I need. Whereas KnewBetta, I know you want more than the gist of it. You want all of it. So I know you're gonna read through it over and over again. Whereas I'm like, you know what? I learned. I know who the Valar are. I don't think I could name all of them right now. I know who the main ones are, you know, and I know how Arda came to be formed, and I know some of the main elves. And I know there was some drama over some really shiny stones. And for me, I'm like, yeah, those are kind of the highlights. And I read Beren and Luthien. People have been telling me about Beren and Luthien since, you know, it was for, okay, y'all will find this funny. Reading Fellowship of the Ring, there's the chapter where it's right after they've left Bree and left the Prancing Pony.
Yeah.
The hobbits are with Aragorn, and Aragorn is telling them the story of Beren and Luthien. And I think it's told in the form of a song or a poem or something. And everyone can come at me. I don't care. I definitely glossed over a lot of the songs and poems in Lord of the Rings. In my defense, they're like every other page. Okay. There's so many of them. Anywho.
Amazing.
And and so Aragorn's telling this story, and I'm like, like this isn't really gonna matter. Like what? Like this doesn't matter. And then, you know, come to find out, oh no, this is the basis of like his entire character. Almost. Like this is the foundation for his love story with Arwen, who in the books you meet Arwen in Rivendell very briefly, and then she doesn't show up again until I think like the second or third to last chapter of Return of the King, and they get married, and even that takes place within the span of like 4 sentences. So having the context of Beren and Luthien would have been helpful, but I was like, I don't really care about this. I'm sure it's not going to be important. And then come to find out,
both descended from Beren and Luthien.
Yeah, come to find out that's like the most important song / poem in Lord of the Rings.
And Arwen is the second coming of Luthien. She is I ain't gonna say reincarnation, but it says she is Luthien Tenuvial, like again, like kind of like, you know what I'm saying? So I think that your understanding of just that in itself is there's hope. There's hope.
Okay, one more question from Kali about your experience with the Silm. Was there any part of it that had you in your feels? Good feels, like happy feels, or sad feels, or just any part of it that you connected emotionally with?
Tough crowd, bro.
Oh no.
So okay, the problem is also that I have a goldfish memory, and like especially like right now more than ever, where just like every part, like work is crazy, personal life is crazy, podcast life is crazy. So I'm also just like, you're talking to me about things that I read, 5 months ago to 3 weeks ago. I don't remember. No, I
if
mean,
anything
the fact
was
that
emotional, you would, I think.
I know that's the thing.
That probably means that the answer is no, which is fine.
Mostly it was just I never felt anything. There was nothing that I was like, oh, that's so heartbreaking, but the thing that got like I think the most visceral reaction out of me is I don't even remember all their names. Tuar and his sister wife. What's her name?
No.
Turin, not Tuar. See, exactly. So, shows how much I.
Turin in Neonor.
That's it. Yeah, that was the story, and it was specifically that part of the story that got like a visceral reaction out of me.
I remember you made a video.
Oh no. Okay, sorry. Let me go back. Also, Who on the Hound?
Yay.
Like tore me into pieces. I was like, y'all, why did no one tell me there was a dog in the Silmarillion? I would have read it ages ago.
The bestest dog.
Literally, and like the way that reading Beren and Luthien, which is, one of Tolkien's, besides Lord of the Rings, Beren and Luthien is probably his most famous story. Or short story comparatively to Lord of the Rings, and the fact that I'm reading it and I'm just like, the dog the dog.
Yay.
When Huon died,
look, we don't talk about
Beren, and Beren couldn't speak back, and he just put his hand on his head.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that moment got me in my feels, because that was such a human moment, like a very realistic human moment of like, how many times have there been people out there who have even gone, you have to go put a pet down and you are trying to comfort them as they are dying, or how many times have, your pets comforted you during hard times, and just so real, so real and rough.
Boy. Even though he didn't speak, he was saying good boy.
Good boy. Yeah.
Good boy.
Yeah.
He's the goodest boy. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh man, this conversation has been.
I know.
I'm very surprised. I thought it was going to be a war, but it's actually been very informative.
No.
Dropping some jewels, guys. Make sure you follow the podcast.
Yes.
Make sure you follow MC's podcast. It's literally it is a treat. Even though she's gonna, be talking shit about the Silmarillion, it's a treat. So, we are way past our time limit. So I'm gonna ask Kali to reel us in. Are we? Did we? I thought we started earlier, but I'm not trying to kick us off. But
no. But we are getting to the outro sequence. So, KnewBetta, do you have a question for our guest?
Now I dread to ask this question. From our previous conversation, but I'm going to ask it anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and shoot. All right, so do the works of Tolkien that you've read. You can pick any character out of any of the works. command or whatever. I'm going to ask you 3 questions. I'm sure you've seen our podcast and you know what those questions are. So, if you could marry anyone from Tolkien's Legendarium, who would you marry? Who would you have protect you? And who would you fight?
Mary Faramir.
Okay.
Good choice.
Okay.
Good choice.
Aragorn
Protect you.
me. And then who do I
Okay.
want to fight? See, the thing is, like, I don't want to fight anyone, so I'm just gonna say, like,
Can't
Sam.
weasel your way out of this. You gotta fight somebody.
Oh, Sam! Oh, no.
But
Does he know you would win?
because I feel like it wouldn't be a fight. I feel like we would just, like, I don't know, talk about gardening. Like, I don't want to fight. Okay,
no.
if,
You got those big
You gotta
cast
fight
iron
him.
pans.
I mean, like, if we're talking about like characters I want to throw hands with,
Yeah.
yeah, probably Denethor because of
There you go.
who I marry.
Yeah. Now we talking. Now we getting into the nitty gritty.
Who else? I don't really know. Again, like I said, Goldfish.
Denethor is good. Denethor is a great
Denethor,
answer.
yeah, but I feel
Yeah.
I'm always like, oh, that's such a basic answer. Let me go deeper and prove myself. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess, yeah, Denethor. And then if I don't really this one usually shocks everyone. Boromir, I do not like Boromir at all. Don't like him in the movie. Don't like that's for our next argument, our next debate.
Yeah, it's gonna be an argument.
Yeah. Oh, I'm already fully aware. Then this is one of those things that I'm like, I unapologetically just
We're no
make
longer
these
friends.
proclamations.
Callie,
all
get
the
us out of
time.
here. I don't want to deal with this anymore.
All right. MC, can we do a recap of your socials, where we find you, where we find your podcast, all that good stuff?
Yeah, sure. You can listen to That's What I'm Tolkien About every Tuesday, wherever you get podcasts. You can follow it on social media at Tolkien About Pod. And you can follow me on Twitter and TikTok at MC Watts Up. That's MCWATTSUP.
All right,
Nice.
boom. So you heard it first from MC herself. Make sure you guys go and listen to the podcast. Follow MC. Make sure we get her where she deserves to be, in the heavens, in the clouds, because she has really good content. So even though she is cynical and evil, we still love her anyway. We appreciate her opinions.
Thank you. And both
both
Kali and KnewBetta have been on a few episodes now. So go, if you're like, I don't know what episodes to listen to, you can go listen to those, or you can start at the beginning of the journey, wherever you want to start. But yeah, definitely go check out the episodes that these two have been on.
Thank you very much. It has been an honor and a pleasure having you on. You are a treasure. Absolutely wonderful. You are hilarious. Keep doing what you do. Absolutely. Do not be deterred. And thank you for today, especially today, being coming up on our show. I really appreciate that. So, Cal, can you hit us with some self-care tips?
I will. So, I think we might have frozen MC out, but hopefully we can finish the rest of the podcast.
All right.
Yeah, so my self-care tips are easy ways to practice self-care while studying. So if you're going to take KnewBettaDoBetta's Guide to the Silmarillion course coming up in November, which you should, here are some tips to help you keep focused and take care of yourself while you are studying. So number one,
the maps of Middle-earth.
Studying those
And
maps,
Valerian.
yeah. So the first thing, if you're going to do a study sesh, is I know this is hard, and this would be hard for me too, would be to unplug and log off social media. The second step is to find a comfortable study space. The third tip is to set at least 30 minutes aside to be active, just to get the brains going and get everything flowing. Tip number 4 kind of goes with tip number 3, which is hydrate and eat. Tip number 5, make a playlist of essential tunes that keep you calm and improve the atmosphere. something that helps you stay focused as opposed to music that will, make you want to sing along and lose your focus. And the last tip is to reach out to friends when you need a break from studying.
Reach them out. Reach out.
Excellent tips.
Wonderful tips. She always comes with the really, really dope tips. I'm gonna inquire as to where she gets them from. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna inquire and I'm gonna read up on those tips. So guys, that is it for episode 16 of Voices of Arda. We are in uncharted territory. We are about to get to 20 episodes. We are moving right along. Every day I see we get more and more followers. Make sure you follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and now available for the first time, Apple Podcasts. Kali finally got her head out her ass and got
All
it done.
right.
Got it done.
I got that shit figured out. Yes.
Yes.
It's rough. I get it. It's so confusing. I get it.
Yes. No, I mean, I appreciate it because so many people, I was like, do you guys have Apple Podcast? Are you on Apple Podcast? And I'm like, no, I'll get back to you. You know what I'm saying? So
Now you
appreciate
can say
that
yes.
so much. So yeah, I'm going to get out of here, guys, because I've been literally on this thing all day. And I am tired.
Time for a
so
break. Time to
I'm
rest
ready
and
to
talk
go.
to your friends that are real.
Yes,
That
yeah,
are-
let's
that
do
are-
what Kali
yeah.
just said. Yeah.
Take a break and
Guys.
take 30 minutes and be active.
I want to go finish eating some more pizza, and I might even hop on live later, but I'm out of here for now. You guys have a wonderful night. Thank you so much for being a guest again, MC. And you go, you go and have a wonderful night. And remember what we talked about earlier. Remember,
Thank you. Yeah.
smile. All
I
right,
will.
take care.
Thanks,
We're out.
everybody.
Thanks. Bye.